Yo, 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 what's up, my people? Man, I want to come on here and share with you today about this concept of God being into the details and how that relates to you making an impact with your message, from you transforming lives with your story. I hear that phrase a lot, that God is in the details. And even from people who don't say that or use that language, it's still in their belief system that in the details of their life, in the intimacy of their life, in the everyday moments of their life, their God, their divine, their, some say the universe is, right? And um, the problem, though, is that when it comes to sharing the story, a lot of times we leave out the details. And it's like we have this belief that God is in the details until it's time to share our story. And then we're not actually sharing the details that there are for us to share. And, I wanted to come up here and share because I think it's really important. Because part of my belief, if you've been following me for a while, is that when we get into the details of our life, that there is divine intelligence in the details. So I'll give you part of how I came to this belief, right? Like, there's a scripture that talks about in Jeremiah that before I knew you, I formed you in your mother's womb. I ordained you to be a prophet unto the nations. And essentially, it teaches us the spiritual principle that we had purpose before we came to the planet. Okay. And I know this might ruffle some beliefs in terms of when life begins. Okay. I believe life began uh, before it began here on earth. Okay. I believe life began the moment that the idea of us came into the mind of God. And so I believe that we all came into this world with purpose. And I was actually talking to my clients about this today because, when I look at my children and I look at the season of life that me and Brittany were in when we had our children, each of our kids came into our life for a very specific reason. They came already accomplishing and walking in and expressing their purpose, right? Like a lot of people think about purpose and they think about it's this thing that I do versus this being that I am, right? Your purpose is who you are, it's not what you do. What you do is just an expression of your purpose. And so when we talk about God being in the details, I believe that if we all have overcome obstacles and we all have gone through difficult seasons in our life, that really the tangible, practical things of like how we overcome or how we achieve business results or how we do anything strategically in our lives is all the same, right? It's like all information. It's all things that, like, if you ask, like, how do you do a TEDx talk? How do you do speeches? How do you make an impact with your story? How do you get better with finances? How do you improve your health? How do you, did I say grow your business? How do you save the economy? Like, whatever your particular niche in this world is, like, there's only so much tangible actions that we can do. And there's not really groundbreaking information in how we achieve those things. But where the uniqueness comes in, where the new information is discovered, is in the details and the specificity of how you wrestled with it. So it's not just in what you've done, it's in how you were thinking while you were doing it. It's how you were feeling while you were doing it. It's your personality and the way in which your mind works and how you were doing the thing that actually uh, 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 is beneath that is uh, the the unique makeup of your life, the divine design of your life. Okay. So I'll give you an example, right? So we talk about like overcoming suicide, right? That's something that I talk about a lot. I hope they don't censor this. But a lot of people, there's a lot of information, a lot of things that we can do to overcome it, right? But my specific purpose and my specific take on it, and my specific way to work through it comes through the details of how I wrestled with those things myself, how I wrestled with those actions myself. Okay. So there was a level of impact that would happen when I would come and I would tell my story and I'd be like, man, I was depressed. I was discouraged. I didn't think I had purpose. I didn't think I had value. And because I didn't know what my purpose outside of sports was, I imploded. I suppressed my emotions. I didn't share my feelings. And because I didn't know how to be vulnerable, I just imploded, and I struggled with these suicidal ideations, and I ended up in a psychiatric unit, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like I could tell the story like that, and it could be a level of, it could have a level of resonance, a level of connection. But there's really not a lot of like uniqueness to that story. Like there's a lot of people who could say that same story. And so what justifies me saying it versus other people saying it is the details of my life, is the divine design of the way that God wired me, and how my personality, my makeup, my psychology is makes it for a different experience of walking through it, right? So part of what happened when I started to look at the details of that story and say, Daryl, what was going on for me emotionally? What was going on for me mentally? What was going on for me spiritually? As I started to examine that story, and I started to see like, man, you know what? Like, I didn't just implode. How did I implode? What was the details of that?
So you tell me that's not true.
Oh man. Well, I remember like putting out like little signals out online, and I would post when I was depressed. I would say, for every dark night, there's a brighter day. And I would say, tough times make tough people. And when I would post that on social media, I was looking for somebody in my life, in my network, somebody in my life to listen to that statement and to see the level of pain that I was struggling with, to see what I was dealing with. And the problem is that nobody was really responding. They were just liking it or maybe sharing it. And it made me feel like nobody really cared with my pain. And so because I was experiencing this social rejection, I I thought no one cared with me, and it fed into this narrative that people didn't really like me for me. They only liked me for my gift. They didn't. They if I did a post around like us playing against a high level, collegiate team that was ranked, everybody had something to say. Everybody was reaching out to me. Everybody was asking questions. But when I said, for every dark night, there's a brighter day, nobody was responding. Nobody was asking questions. Nobody was saying, Daryl, is there anything? What's going on with you, man? Are you okay? And that fed into this belief that I had that people don't love me for me. They only love me for my gift. Okay. I'm sharing that with you because one of the things that I learned was that the more vulnerable we are, the more it lets love know that it needs to rush in. Now, what I just did is I just said something different that you probably haven't heard as much, that was birthed from the details of my life. And most people are afraid to look at the details because we go through seasons of challenge, we go through seasons of trauma, we go through seasons of difficulty, we go through seasons of life, and we don't have a healthy process of processing and expressing. And whenever we don't express, we suppress. And so a lot of times when it comes to looking at the details of one's life, there's so much suppression that we can't see the story beyond the specific actions we took. We don't see our emotional wrestle. We don't see our psychological wrestle. I share with you a belief that people don't love me for me, they just love me for my gift. That is something that I've said that has resonated with, man, thousands and thousands and thousands of people from stage, because it was my own unique wrestle with depression and suicidal ideations. And that, I'm just giving you an example of what this could look like for you. So the challenge is that looking at these details is hard because there's been a level of suppression. And sometimes it's hard to see it when you've been so suppressed that you can't even see what's there for you. And part of the work that I do with my clients is, man, let's look at these stories. Let's get into the intimacy, the details of these stories, so that we can see what's there, so that we can dissect the divine intelligence that's there, so that we can pull out unique things that only you can say because of the way that God made you and the way that God wired you. So I challenge you, I encourage you to look into the details of your life. And if you really are a person who believes that God is in the details, then don't just have a psychological belief. Have that reflected in the way that you share your story, in the way that you lead. Get into the details and be willing to open your heart and be vulnerable enough to share what's really there. If you've seen my statement, my mission statement that I've been posting online. I've been, everybody has like their mission statement, their value proposition or whatever. And, I've come up with a new one, right? And it's evolving for me. But one of the things I said is that I help leaders to awaken to the seeds of their divine calling through the vulnerable sharing of their most intimate stories and the powerful advancement of their God-given message. So when you think about the vulnerable sharing of their most intimate stories, part of the reason why that's important is because we can't really share our God-given message if we're not willing to be vulnerable with the details of our intimate stories. Now, I know that there's people out there that would be like, hey, when you're a speaker, you're not up there to talk about you, you're up there to give value to the audience. Well, I would push back on that. And I say, if you're not talking about yourself, then you're talking about something that is outside of your experience, or you're talking to people with a distance between them and you. And that distance is going to affect your impact. That distance is going to affect the ripple effect of your message, because people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Everyone communicates, John Maxwell says, but only few people connect. And the most powerful connection is what? In person. The most powerful connection we have is in our most intimate relationships, right? I'm more connected to my wife than I am to any other person on this world, right? I'm more connected to my children than I am to other people that are in my extended family. I'm more connected to my extended family than I am my audiences, right? What's the difference? The intimacy, okay? And so the more willing I am to be vulnerable with the intimate details of my life, the greater connection that I can make with people, right? And if we're not teaching the intimacy and the details of our stories, then we're no better than ChatGPT. There's really no need for our message. People can just Google the answers. People can just ask ChatGPT what to do. But in order for them to learn from you and justify what makes listening to you important, it's getting into the intimacy of those details. It's getting into the specificity of how you were wired and how you think and what came up for you and what was your wrestle. And that, to me, is what makes a message rich. That's what moves it beyond mechanics and body language and tone and hand motions and gestures and stage positioning. It makes it about essence and divine intelligence and resonance and vulnerability and an impact that's beyond what either of us can imagine. Okay, so God truly is in the details. So I wanted to come on that to awaken you to the seeds of your divine calling and to get you thinking about your story in a different way. What if your story was more powerful than you knew? What if your message was richer than what you've been sharing? It's not to say that what you've been doing is not good. It's to say that there's another level, and that level is found in the details. Okay? Somebody needs to comment, God is in the details in the chat, okay? Because I believe that's true. All right, y'all. So that's it today. Just wanted to share that thought. I'd love to hear from you. What came up for you when I shared this? How comfortable are you with going into the details of your story? Are you living in that paradigm of like, hey man, it's not about me, it's about the audience, and I'm not up there to talk about me? Because if you're not talking about you, then what are you talking about? Somebody else's information, somebody else's training, somebody else's experience. Why did God send you here? Why do you have life if you ain't talking about you? You matter. You matter. You matter. Your voice matters. Your feelings matter. Your emotions matter. And in a world and in a culture that has raised children to be seen and not heard, and a lot of family dynamics where people could not express and they were too emotional or too much or taking up too much space, like this sharing of who you are with the world is the most powerful thing you can do. What are we but a story? What are we but a story? Can I tell you something? That when we take our last breath, all people are going to know of us is the stories they hear of us. And so how important is it for us to be more vulnerable with our stories? How important is it for us to get into the details and to pull out the uniqueness of our message from those details? It's very important. So if you need some support with that, drop me in the chat, drop support in the chat. I'm happy to hop on a conversation with you. And if you're in that work and you're about that life, like lean in, tag me in some of the posts that you're doing, tag me in some of the speeches that you're doing, tag me in some of the places where you're sharing this, because I love making impact with people who are playing that game. Okay, so I'd love to hear from you. What came up for you in this process, and just chime in, talk to your boy. All right, peace.